Coming up on Small Town Charm, ethics. Who has it? Who doesn't have it? Who pretends to have it? Who wants you to focus on whose ethics and not their own? All that and much more on Small Town Charm. Stay tuned. Welcome into Small Town Charm, the show all about Nolensville and that special brand of niceness mixed with meanness that we experience every day in small towns, just like Nolensville. If you like this show, make sure you like it if you're on YouTube, or subscribe if you're on YouTube, or if you're on a podcast or wherever you are, just subscribe, give us an honest rating and review if you like the show. That would help us out a lot. All right, so today the first thing is we are in a secret location, as we promised in the last episode. I think we're gonna hold off on saying exactly where we are because it's going to be appropriate to our next episode. And I think we probably planned on this episode being about something different until the ethics conversation that happened at the VOC meeting just recently. So we want to talk about that. But first, my name's Daniel. We got Mike. We got Chris here with us. And definitely appreciate you watching, getting your feedback. We've heard a lot of it, and we're going to keep trucking along, trying to make this thing better and better as we go. All right. So this is one of those stories, again, where I don't even know where to start. There has been a lot of talk, there's a lot of focus recently on, for better or for worse, I'd say for worse, on the police chief, and a lot of people coming out to support him. I think anyone who in this town probably already knows why that's been going on, but I think there's been this ethics investigation, I guess you'd call it, into Lisa and Wendy, two of our commissioners on our board of commissioners, about having tickets fixed. The local news called it a ticket fixing scandal.
Yeah.
Scandal. So I know that people that I know in town are a little frustrated with some of the local news coverage. So I'd like for us to maybe talk about that topic a little bit. There's a lot of subplot here that I don't think anyone has publicly really come out and talk about. I think that's a good opportunity for us to do some things other people might be scared to talk about as well. So who wants to get started? Who wants to talk about the backstory of this a little bit? Why everyone says this is a political thing and it's not really on the surface what it seems?
Yeah. I mean, I think the jumping off point, it's kind of a great segue out of where we left listeners on the last episode. So, because it kind of ties into a little bit of the Better Nolensville story, things that were going on during that whole era in Nolensville politics. But pretty much like right as Nolensville was going through the charter change process, there in the background, it wasn't being talked about publicly, but in the background there was this this kind of scandal going on at town hall. So there was a former female police officer who had left the force and was suing the town for sexual harassment. I don't quote me on this as a fact, but I'm pretty sure that our mayor was named in it, in addition to, is that right, Mike? Do you remember?
Yeah, vice mayor, mayor.
Yes, mayor, vice mayor.
That's where the insider, she referred to them as a Nolensville insider, and that's where I got the name for the blog.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and without getting into like all the details of like what happened in the harassment case, I think that could be a whole episode in and of itself. But there were some people involved in politics that were involved in that, and during kind of all this crazy stuff that was going on with Better Nolensville and the charter change, I mean, I'll just own up to this. Like, I released some text messages on Facebook from one of the individuals involved in that lawsuit. These were public record. They were in the federal docket that I paid money to get access to, and those text messages got released as evidence that had come out in discovery. Come to find out, they were never supposed to be released. It was actually an accident that they were
I remember
released.
that now.
Oh, I do remember that. Yeah.
No, it wasn't an accident. It was something where the town attorney or the law firm the town was being represented with was tasked with defending the town,
That's right.
not the board.
That's right. Yeah.
That's an interesting distinction. It's minutia, I know, but like that is, it's funny how that came out. That it was I guess it was. Oh no, you misunderstood what our job. The lawyers basically said you misunderstood what our job was.
Yeah.
In relation to the town.
Yeah.
Like we're making sure the town doesn't get sued. We're not trying to help the individual people.
Right.
On
Right.
this. And before we move on, I just had a thought. A light bulb went off in my head about a consistent theme and certain characters in this story of their lack of attention to minutia.
Right.
Very important small details
Yes.
that they seem to always miss
Yes.
when this stuff happens.
And somehow they end up in trouble because of it. So, yeah, some people just never learn apparently. But
This is like 3 lawsuits in like 3 years.
yeah,
When it's
it's
like,
crazy.
It's like a Christmas tradition.
Real quick though, speaking
Yeah.
of lawsuits, I forgot to say it at the beginning. This show is just for entertainment purposes only. We believe we believe all this stuff is true. I don't think any of us have knowingly lied on this show.
No.
So I will say we all believe these things to be true, but don't take our word for any of this. That's the last thing we want, because a lot of this stuff that we're talking about, we got into this mess because people believed what people said without actually doing any research.
100%.
So don't do that with us either.
Yep.
If you seem interested in or feel interested in what we're talking about, go do your own research, but don't take our word for it. This is just for entertainment. We're just throwing stuff out there. We don't mean any of this to be fact. We're not journalists, so don't take this as anything other than entertainment unless you want to go do your own research and find out what the real truth is.
Yep.
That was a
100%.
pro segue. That was awesome.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I'll just add to that. Like, as we're telling some of these stories, like, this is kind of our angle of the story,
Yeah.
right? It's our understanding of how the story went. We're obviously not like eyewitnesses to any of these things.
Right.
We're kind of like telling it from like a hand.
And like, I mean, I don't know about
arm's
you
length
guys.
distance.
I don't know about you guys, but I mean, my idea of this podcast is approach it just like we would guys' night. Like we're sitting, like that's the whole reason why we drink beers. If the cameras weren't on, this is the exact same conversation.
Yeah, sadly, we spend a lot of time talking about this crap.
Yeah,
So.
and people seem to laugh whenever we're around.
Right.
So I figure
I can't have a dinner with anyone that I know without this being really the only thing we talked about.
Yeah, sadly. Well, so back into the story. This former police officer is suing the town for sexual harassment. Some current leadership on BOMA was involved. Was named in the suit. She couldn't actually, because they weren't her direct employer, she couldn't actually sue the individuals. She had to sue the entity, which is the town of Nolansville. But she did name all of these individuals as being a party and having done things to her.
I think
allegedly.
at one point too. I think at one point she named a few people in it too.
Yes, she did. So that lawsuit, right as the charter change was going through, BOC, BOMA actually agreed to a settlement right before the charter changed, and before the commissioners took over.
Six-figure settlement.
Yeah,
yes.
it was $355,000, and
that sounds about right.
yeah, the text messages that got released on Facebook had some just really it was a text message between like a group of friends. 2 of the people on this text chain though were sitting aldermen at the time when these were sent, and they were just really inappropriate. I mean, it was like links to like porn and like.
It wasn't porn. It was helpful guides for specific types of.
Yeah. Like sexual acts.
Sexual. It wasn't. It was like sexual acts for dummies.
Right. And then just a lot of like crude, language. I think that some people would. Say it's like locker room talk, so to speak.
And in that defense, just to be fair, like, I think people crack jokes like that all the time.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I
But if you're in a lawsuit,
I remember somebody saying at one point, like, what would we find if your text messages were posted online? Yeah,
that's fair.
Touche. That's a great point.
I say terrible things to my brother all the time.
Yeah.
Do you say terrible things to your coworkers?
But
only my wife.
But I do think the point stands that like, okay, so like maybe if you look at those text messages like an isolated thing, maybe not that big of a deal on their own. But when you're looking at those text messages as being sent by a person involved in a sexual harassment lawsuit, like all of a sudden there seems to be a little bit of a pattern of behavior here that kind of maybe implies guilt. So anyway, the town settled that. That individual ended up suing the town because his text messages weren't supposed to be released. And so I think he got, what, $175,000, Mike?
Sounds right.
And that
well, it's not. Yeah, I think we can name that person, right?
Yeah. So that was Jason Patrick.
Right. That's public record. Of
right.
who that's not anything.
Yeah, and the board of commissioners was actually had to vote to agree to that settlement after they all got into office, and so
I would avoid the name, by the way, if that name wasn't going to come up again. Yeah. Many times more in the rest of the story.
Fair. So, I would say that's like party number one in this story. Party number two is a gentleman that we've talked about a little bit before as well, Tommy Duggar. And he also kind of comes into this story around the same time. So as the charter changed, 9 people ran for 5 seats on the new board. And out of all the people who had served before, only Derek and Tommy were kind of
Wendy
too, yes. Yeah. And so there were 3 people that were going to run again who had also been on BOMA.
Yeah.
And Tommy was one of them. And I don't have any problem admitting this. I think we talked that this was going to come out at some point. But during that election, I single-handedly, I didn't work with anyone. I actually really didn't tell anyone I was going to do this beforehand. But I chose to set up an ad account as kind of a pseudo brand called I Heart Nolo or I Love Nolo. And I ran attack ads against some of the politicians. And, we can probably talk about that on a whole another episode.
I'm going to make a note. We'll talk about that in another episode because there's a lot there too.
But the moral of the story, or kind of the outcome of all that, is one of the people I ran ads against was Tommy. And I ran ads against Tommy's voting record and things that I just felt like that he had done in the town over his 20-year career or whatever that were all true. They were all factual, but it was basically just like, don't vote for this guy. We just voted to get rid of these people. So why would you give him a chance again?
Who did you run the ads against?
So I ran the ads against Tommy, Haley Gallick, and Wendy Kukmuchi.
And I'm trying to, without reaching for my phone to check what the ads used to be. So what were the ads about? Like what was the?
Yeah, so one against Tommy was he has served since the town was incorporated. Correct. And since for that entire time, he's voted against the fire department,
Correct.
And voted against growing the police department, and voted against roads and things like that. Basically just saying part of the reason that the town is in the state it's in is because this person has been leading it in some shape or form for the entirety of its existence. So
it's the same thing that I said, I think, in the last episode, where sometimes the truth is not kind to certain people.
Sure.
And you're not being evil or anti-moral.
Yep.
By telling the truth, sometimes it's just not fair to everybody.
Right.
And if you're here's the thing: when you have a field of 9 people running,
yep,
it's really hard if you're trying to run ads or support 5 people trying to collectively push that.
Right.
It's much easier to say, look, I actually don't care who you vote for, but there's certain people who might be damaging to this town if they continue.
Yep.
It's much easier to just say, don't do that.
Right.
Vote for 8 other people or 6 other people or whatever it is. Just not.
You up your odds by eliminating one.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
It's not, and also the attack ads. That's even too strong of a word, in my opinion, for what it was.
I mean, we've talked about this, Chris. Obviously, I knew for a bit. I wasn't gonna come out and out you. That was your thing. That was you made that choice, and you. That's if I had something that I didn't want to discuss publicly, I know you would do the same for me, right?
Sure.
The thing that was always shocking to me was Wendy. Wendy Mucci was shocking to me because she turned those attack ads into attack ads, because the only thing that from what I remember, and go ahead and prove me wrong, from what I remember, the ads that you were running was her with Jimmy Alexander in her front yard with a Jimmy sign.
Yeah.
That like her reaction made that a negative ad.
Right.
Like that was you took her picture and you posted it online, and her reaction made that an attack ad. And I understand it's off-putting. Like we just outed the whole board, and Jimmy was a significant part for a lot of people to vote for that change.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, understandably so. But like I felt like she was trashing Jimmy more so than you were, because she took such great offense to that ad.
How would you feel if you're Jimmy and you all of a sudden Wendy's like, you posted a picture of me with this guy?
Right.
Yeah,
What an
like,
attack!
Right. Right.
It's like he didn't like. It's not like Anthony Weiner, right? Like he's just the mayor. The
100%.
people, you know.
Well, I mean, with Haley, I think the ads I ran, we didn't know anything about Haley, so I literally didn't know her at all. She had never run
what
before.
ads did you run against Haley?
Basically, I mean, it kind of came down to you realized which camp, I guess, of politicians Haley was in with.
You saw who had the sign on Rocky Fork in
Exactly.
Nolensville.
And so, like, it was kind of just like, okay, well,
Whatever sign from that corner.
you know, right or wrong, like, it was kind of just like, well, like, don't vote for her. She's guilty by association, essentially.
Yeah.
And to be fair, like, Wendy, I said, like, hey, look, she supported the mayor. She's going to support the mayor's policies going forward. I think if you look at how she has voted on things since she's been in office, that's pretty true, actually. She's been a proponent of slowing down growth and, like stalling things and making, like, putting everything through committees and, like, wanting to spend money on lots of studies, all things that Jimmy did for years. Haley, you know, I think it's pretty clear to say, like, she's still in with all those same politicians, and so while I definitely think to me it was kind of an experiment in Nolensville, like, can Nolensville handle this kind of political stuff?
Yeah.
Obviously not. Like,
No.
people freaked out. But
Well, I got messages from people begging me
yeah, that's
to
right.
and here's the thing, I've never heard you actually say that you ran those ads. I wasn't sure
Yeah.
you ran those ads till you said it just now,
Yeah.
because I didn't want to know, and like I wanted plausible deniability.
Such a politician.
I know,
man.
right? But the messages I got, I was honest about it. I
Right.
number one didn't want to like spread a rumor that I wasn't 100% sure on, because at that point you would kind of like, you weren't like as like active with like the other stuff, because like the charter change stuff was over at that point.
Correct.
So we weren't like, it wasn't like we were all like as hyper active with each other as we had been.
I just went rogue.
Right. And so I remember a message from one person, and I won't say her name, she knows who she is, basically begging me to go have the person who did this stop.
Right.
And she wouldn't say who she thought it was. And I was like, she's like, do you know who this is, right? I'm like, I think I know who this is. I'm pretty sure I know who this is, but I'm not sure. She's like, well, can you beg? I'm like, no, he's a grown man. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not going to like go tell somebody else to stop because so one person got their feelings hurt.
Right.
And also, tell me what he said that wasn't true.
Right.
I said that in the message, like, because that's what really bothers me is
Right.
attack ads that you see like an election season on like TV
Yep.
are full of like half truths, lies, slanting of things.
Right.
Saying Wendy got appointed by the former mayor, here's a picture of them where she supported him, is so innocuous that
Right.
it's like
It's an endorsement.
it hurts. Yeah.
Right.
So so like we're touching on Jimmy a lot here, and I wanted to discuss this on a podcast. So obviously I rolled up 2 blogs since the last podcast aired, and one of them, when I started to do the schedule in my head of how they're gonna roll out, and a lot of it, like when I do blogs, a lot of it just has to do when I have time, because it takes a few hours to write it, then I sit on it for like, I let my wife edit it all, because I'm an immigrant, I can't spell worth of crap, and then I need to have like at least a half a day to be able to manage the reaction of it, and not manage like I need to be able to be responsive to it when it rolls out. So the only time that worked for me was Sunday. That was Jimmy's bridge dedication, and as soon as I rolled it out, I'm like, crap. Like, I rolled it out, and I'm scrolling through Facebook. There's people posting pictures. I'm like, oh man, it sucks. It's gonna look like I did this on purpose.
Yeah.
I didn't do it on purpose. Nobody came at me for doing it on that day.
Right.
But I did want to point out that I disliked Jimmy as the mayor of Nolensville. I never cared. Like, I never got to know him enough to, like,
Yep.
dislike him as a person.
Yeah.
Over the course of time, especially after he stopped being mayor, there was, like, I noticed that people that did have a personal relationship really cherished the guy. Like, he had a great relationship with his kids, with his grandchildren.
Yep.
And, like, I always assumed it was personal from that end to me.
Sure.
But it's never personal from my end to them. It's always that's why I only talk about the politics. I never like when I wrote that blog, you were talking about the text messages from Jason. I stayed away from that in my blog because I knew that he won the lawsuit.
Yep.
Like, he can't sue us because it was online. Like, we didn't pull it. But it was just something that didn't necessarily have anything to do with politics, right? So that's I kind of stay away from that. And back to, like, mentioning people. I'm not comfortable mentioning private citizens as much, unless it's in a joking matter. I'm 100% comfortable mentioning politicians because when I talk about these issues, I'm not looking at them as a awesome dad and an awesome granddad. I'm looking at them as, like, these are the policies that you put in place in office. That's what I'm talking about.
You separate it.
Yeah. They could stop being that politician. They're still going to be that great dad, or that great granddad, or whatever. And that's two separate things.
I kind of made that same point in the latest blog when I was talking about Jessica and Kate, and I paused there for a second. I'm like, I have to clarify this. You can be a great mom. You can be a great real estate agent, or whatever Jessica does or did. You can be, like, a rock star and a great friend, great wife, but you can be a really sucky public servant. Like, those two things don't go hand in hand. Right?
Absolutely.
So
yeah. Well, jumping back on, I guess, the storyline of one. I mean, I think it's important. Like, we'll just cap off, and I'll just look at the camera, and I'll just say, I ran the ads. Like, nobody else up here ran these ads. I did it by myself. So anyone who's mad, I think some people posted on Facebook recently trying to, like, get me to answer for it. Here's my answer. I did it. You can be mad. Doesn't hurt my feelings at all. Like, it's over. It's done with.
I think that's the last check mark of the supposed conspiracies that geniuses have unlocked with their sleuthing, or they think they have.
Yeah, and in hindsight, I if I had it do over again, I probably wouldn't do it. Like, it was kind of like a test of, like, can Nolensville handle this? But nonetheless, the reason that's important to the story is that happened, and one of the people that the ads were run against was Tommy Duggar. And Tommy, in that election, came in dead last. He out of all 9 candidates that were running for office, he got the least amount of votes of everyone. And, I think looking at what we are discussing that's happened over the last few weeks in Nolensville politics, you have 2 players, Jason Patrick and Tommy Duggar, that have somewhat of a grudge, I think, that they're carrying.
Or at least it seems like it's a grudge.
Yeah, it appears that way from things that have happened in prior elections and in the charter change. And so, I mean, I think that kind of brings us up to speed of where we're at. I think we can probably get into, like, where things stand now, and
what happened.
Why are we even bringing these 2 people's names up as part
we
of
have
this?
we have a few minutes left in this segment. One thing that kind of I don't think I paid attention too much to where Tommy landed in that election. I didn't realize it was at the bottom.
Yeah.
We don't want to get into Enneagram talk, but I'm a 3, which means that I'm pretty empathetic towards. That's like part of my personality type, is to always try to put myself in other people's shoes. Sometimes to the detriment of not even knowing. I can't even establish my own personality because I'm always trying to, like, empathize with somebody else. Mm-hmm. But I think about that, like, if you're Tommy and you've, in your own mind, I don't think anybody in this town has ever just, like, on purpose done, like, horrible things, like evil things. That's the thing I never get about, like, talk radio or, like, all these, like, talking heads, hot takes kind of things. It's like, it's calling people evil or, like, wanting to destroy a town. Like, I don't think anybody in this whole scenario, our town wants to destroy our town.
Bullcrap. I think there's at least one person.
Okay, we'll get there. Okay,
there's at least one person.
But my point is, like, if you're Tommy in that situation, you feel like you've spent decades
Sure.
helping a town, doing your best, working hard. I'm sure you spent a lot of time and effort on that. And then to have an election, and it kind of felt like he fought against the charter change, and then that happened. And then have such an overwhelming like vote kind of not for you. You've got to like, it's got to be a deep rooted like hurt that you feel. You can, how can you not? And so
Right.
it's not, I'm not saying that like he didn't deserve to feel that way based on his voting record or like what he did, but like I think it's going to be important to remember how deep that hurt probably goes for him as we get into like more of what's going on
Sure.
in this. Let's take a short break and then we'll come right back. All right, we're back. So we're up to speed now, ish. There's so much we could talk about.
That's Nolensville.
Yeah.
You can get wrapped up in these rabbit holes, and you can kill 2 hours talking about nuances of this.
I thought we already had an episode about ethics, and like here we are again. You know, like a week later. Okay, so you shared about kind of Tommy Duggar losing the election. I mentioned about how it's got to hurt pretty deep to have that happen. So you basically got us up to about 2 years ago, right? That's where we're at. A new board of commissioners. All right, so here we are. Go.
Yeah, so I'll be honest with you. Like, I think part of the context of where this conversation is starting is what happened last night at the meeting, right? And so, like, the last during this election cycle, there's been stuff being done to a sitting commissioner who's running for re-election, Lisa Garamoni, who, I think it's fair to say we all support her. We're all helping her on her campaign. So we have a little bit of a vantage point to what's going on that's maybe different than the average person. But basically, like a year and a half ago, somebody tipped off Tommy. My understanding, at least, somebody tipped off
Jason.
Somebody tipped off Jason Patrick and let him know that there was some body cam footage of Lisa getting pulled over for a speeding ticket and having this interaction with the police who were attending to an accident on the side of the road.
Two separate things.
Yes, two separate occasions. Lisa had been at a party drinking and had come out of a car in the passenger seat and is just on this video talking, and the police officer says something about her being drunk on the video. And so
one of the police officers.
One of the police officers. Thank you.
These are important details.
Well, and we'll give the full story on that.
Yeah.
But the point of this is that a year and a half ago, somebody tipped Jason Patrick off that those videos existed, and he went and used a Freedom of Information Act request to get a copy of them.
Right, Tennessee Public Records. Someone correct us on that, but
yeah,
it's easy. It's easier to say FOIA.
FOIA, yeah.
It's easier just to say that.
Turpa?
I don't know what it's called. But he made a records request and got the body cam footage. And then a few months later, Tommy Duggar.
In August. So
like
Jason happened in March, Tommy happens in August.
That's right.
2021.
2021.
And I actually made a records request of their records requests recently, so I actually have a copy of their requests.
It makes me wonder, again, I talked about the minutia, the lack of it. Did they know that those requests are also public record?
Yeah.
Anybody could go figure that out.
Who knows? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But anyways, they pulled this a year and a half ago and just magically waited until Lisa was running for re-election to, allegedly do anything with it. So I think it's fair to say we don't actually know if those two individuals are the ones who have released it or done anything with it.
Right.
All we know is that there's some circumstantial evidence, which is they were the ones who gained access to the information, and nobody else has requested that information from the town. And somehow that information started being emailed around town and posted onto YouTube in the last month.
So either one of those two computers got targeted with a hack, but a sophisticated hacker got in there.
It couldn't though, because when you do a request for public information, they don't give you. They typically give you like a hard copy, like it would be like on a CD or.
So someone would have to copy that onto a computer, and then, I mean, there is no version of reality where one of those two people didn't send it to somebody.
Correct.
One person. It could just be one person. Let's be fair.
Yep.
But they chose to share that with somebody, at least one person.
I mean, they had to have, right?
Right, there's literally-
there's,
No, I mean,
like,
well,
I think
if
the
only
lo-
two
I-
people got the info.
Well,
only two people got
I
the
think
body
in the
cam
lawsuit,
footage.
I think in the lawsuit there is something where, and I don't want to say his name. It's not fair to say his name.
Sure.
Private citizen.
Right, it's a private citizen and never served. There's a person that's getting sued that's a private citizen. I think in the lawsuit it states that he received this information from somebody other than the two, than
That's right.
Jason and Tommy.
Okay.
So like that it's circulated.
Right.
Right. So it's safe to assume it got circulated out of one of those two parties to
Right.
start with, or the kindest explanation is that one of those two people are the one who are sharing it. There's not a good look at though either way.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I just don't see how you can like say that they didn't share it because
Right.
But that's also
Allegedly.
that's also not a crime. I mean, I've showed you stuff that I FOIA. I mean, my blog has that FOIA that you got about them getting
for
FOIA.
sure.
Like it's,
For
I mean,
sure.
So that's not whatsoever a crime. They're more than entitled to spread it all around. The thing that the thing that's super weird is that Jason gets it in March, Tommy gets it in August. Nothing happens till this September, October,
Yeah.
where somebody from a Proton email, like completely anonymous, like a Swiss account type of deal, emails it to the board, then emails it out to like all these different people, completely anonymous, uploads it on YouTube. YouTube takes it down a few times, and then finally goes Rumble, right? So like like the crazy. It's just like if you're trying to be truthful and you're trying to better the public, right?
Yeah.
You're trying to fix a wrong. Why do you wait 18 months on it?
Right.
And if it gets leaked out, granted, it might not be one of the two. If it gets leaked out, why is it all anonymous?
Right.
It's like it makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
And I saw it when it was on YouTube. I
Right.
watched it. It was this amazing is not the right word. It was very poor, but it was an edit where because the rumor they spread was that Lisa had a DUI erased or didn't get a DUI only because of her being a commissioner.
Right.
And the amazing thing is like these videos are shared on YouTube and there's like a text that comes up on the video and it's like, go request the video yourself if you want to know more.
Right.
It's like, you have the video and you're posting it. Why wouldn't you just post the whole thing?
Yep.
Right.
It's only because they rely on people not doing anymore. They like people are addicted to innuendo and the gossipy version of the story. The edit of a video where it cuts off, where one cop says, "Tell the chief the next time, or if she's driving drunk, I'm gonna arrest her." End of video.
Yeah.
And the
Right.
video, 47-minute video,
Yeah.
down to 15 seconds.
Yeah.
And then the next the reply from the other cop is, well she wasn't I don't think she was driving or whatever it was. Not to mention that there was never a site that's not like something got erased. It just never happened.
No.
So that whole thing is just hilarious to me.
Right.
And so here we are dealing with that. Lisa, it's so funny to see the other side like twist this, but the part that really, I think I know it upsets you because you spoke out about it. I'm sure upsets you too, but I think we talked about this in another episode, but the mental gymnastics that the people behind this are going through now, that they realize that not only did they wrap up their target in this, Lisa, but they got Wendy Cook-Mucci in it, and then they got the police chief in it.
And it's not even like that's putting it mildly because their biggest punishment. So Wendy's and Lisa's biggest or most severe punishment was a censure, which is basically what Joel did with Out of Vote yesterday.
Right.
I disapprove. Don't do that again. That's what
That's a censure,
is.
yeah.
Roddy Parker, the chief, just got completely raked through the coals over this. And I remember there's two people, and they're gonna know right away when they listen to this. There's two people that reached out to me about this whole thing going down about 2-3 weeks ago, and I remember saying if these people keep pushing this matter, Roddy's gonna be the one that takes the biggest hit. Like how can it not be?
Yeah.
Like you, the rhetoric is that he's fixing tickets based on your status in town, and the rhetoric is that somebody got away with driving drunk. Like,
Right.
how do you not go after the
I
police
mean,
on
what
this?
we saw last night. So like, as this has like unfolded over the last few weeks, like all of a sudden, like the local news stations, like all of them have picked it up as like this like big scandalous story that's happening in Nolensville, and it's like so like salacious. The headlines that they're like publishing and stuff.
And who are they focused on?
Yeah, and they're focused on Roddy.
Yep.
Like,
Right,
I
because-
mean, literally, the news story on the 5 o'clock news last night about Nolensville was a ticket fixing
Scandal, yeah.
in
Oh yeah, the
Nolensville.
scandal. I know it's like they made it sound way big. I mean, it's bottom feeders. It's like what
Yeah.
sells now? Politics, because it's November, and police, right? I
Right.
mean, that's gonna sell you page views, and that's exactly what they're doing.
Right.
It's the lack of attention to minutia
Right.
that got them here. It's how do you not know that when you decide to go with a narrative that the police chief proactively
Yep.
fixed tickets for commissioners, and then they just didn't force the issue after the fact to go back and say no, charge me or make me pay the fine. That somehow that doesn't make the chief look worse than everybody else. And the fact that now the panic on that side from that story is now that all the support for the chief came out, there's a panic going on, somehow trying to relate it back to just Lisa did something wrong in this
Right.
because she didn't publicly apologize and beg for mercy because of how the timing of when she decided to pay the ticket.
Yeah.
It's I would think these people were dumb if they weren't working so hard with their minds to make this all make sense.
Right.
Where one person did something wrong and it's their target and nobody else did something wrong.
They're bending bullets. They're trying to bend the bullet.
Yeah.
The Matrix.
Yep. I think the whole thing is laughable, to be honest with you. Like, I texted someone about this the other night, and I just said, because they texted me a news story, and they were like, "Can you believe this?" And I was like, "Yeah, I mean, that news story is a nothing burger. It's like, there's literally no story here, in my opinion. Like, okay, great, like, somebody got let off from a speeding ticket. I think we were talking about this the other night, and it's just like, how is this any different than getting a warning? Like,
Yeah.
if you get pulled over by the police, which actually, like a few weeks ago, coming home from a podcast, I got pulled over by the police. One of my headlights was out, and
Did you get a ticket?
no, I got a warning. Like, hey, your headlight's out. You need to make sure you like.
You need to go chase it down and go pay it now.
Yeah.
Go pay it.
But I mean, it's just like, okay, so
That
this-
officer had discretion, but
correct.
the chief
Yeah,
did it.
that's the point I'm
His
driving
boss
at.
didn't.
It's like, so on the spot, an officer can have the discretion to let you off the hook, but like after the ticket's written by a police officer and then turned in, Roddy, our police chief, is not allowed to have discretion. And if you listen to his explanation last night, like, okay, he admits, yeah, you're not supposed to do this. Like, he does admit, like, by the letter of the law, like, this is frowned upon. But what he was doing was looking out for the betterment of the staff, like, thinking about, like, the context of what just happened in Nolensville.
The charter change had just happened when
Charter
this happened.
change had just happened.
I think
Politics were super
Do you
heated.
remember when the ticket was?
The ticket was
December?
it was 2 weeks after the election.
No, that was
or
the-
after they took office.
No, that thing happened. So the 2 week thing was.
The party thing with
The
the
party
talk of
thing.
the
Okay.
officer.
Because I think that yeah, so it was the party thing, and because I think meaning Lisa, when she talked yesterday, she said she mentioned she was the commissioner of Nolensville because she was still excited about it. It
Yeah.
just happened, and then the ticket I think was like December something. So it's like two BOC meetings into it.
Yeah, it was very early on, and I think Roddy was reading the room. He was saying, "Look, like we just went through this really contentious, like town dividing experience of both changing our charter and having 9 candidates run for 5 seats, and I don't want there to be any controversy with our board of commissioners." And oh, by the way, like I also think it's humorous that if you just look at kind of the political divide on the board, Roddy didn't do this to like pick sides.
Yeah,
They picked because it was
He literally
either
did
way.
it to
was like
two.
He wanted to
equal
smooth
He did it to
opportunity
two commissioners
forgiveness.
who are polar opposites in
Yeah.
terms of like their views on policy and things like that.
Well,
That's a good point.
One thing I thought about just now was that there's 3 kind of like people. We can move on from this because
Yeah.
it's kind of laborious. But like, there's 3 people in this story. There's Roddy, there's Lisa, and there's Wendy.
yeah,
The Roddy story also is that he didn't like know like that it was wrong at the time, like to do that. Like he you know, like he didn't think it was wrong or whatever. He said something like that. I don't know exactly what it was, but it was like, I know now I wouldn't do it again.
Right.
He
But that-
can do it again. We already fixed this issue.
Right. He can't. Yeah, but like he said, I didn't think I was doing anything wrong, and everyone believes him.
Right.
Everyone and the people who are like pushing this other narrative want you to believe Roddy, the guy with decades of police force experience, didn't think it was wrong. Believe him.
Yep.
Okay, so you're left with Wendy and Lisa. Wendy says she didn't know anything about it. Just throw that out. Just whatever. I don't care.
Yep.
But now all of a sudden you want a person who got elected to public service for the first time and is at best 3 months into their job. She should have known better.
Right.
The police chief didn't need to know better after decades of public service.
Right.
And he's the one making the decision.
Right.
But the public servant who's an amateur at this,
Yeah.
somehow
And
she should be
this-
held accountable for
This
this.
whole time, I don't think we have a town manager.
Yep.
We don't have a town manager during this whole
Correct.
interaction.
Yeah, correct. Well, and I think that's a great point, Daniel, because, okay, so if you rewind probably like 6 months ago, maybe a year ago, there was another ethics complaint made against Haley Gallick.
Oh yeah. So you talking about the email?
Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, I filed it, so that's how I know.
No, we're not.
So,
I'm so sad. I was thinking about.
I mean, I just feel like you
There's
have
so
to say
many.
it. But yeah, like no. So I filed an ethics complaint against Haley Gallick probably about a year ago because of her relationship to the town. She works at the town's insurance company, Public Entity Partners is what it's called, and she had voted on some things and not disclosed it, and so we brought it up, or I brought it up, and they, like, the board had to deal with it. They had to take it up and decide what they were going to do. Every single board member said, you know what, like, you're new, like, we're all new to this. Not everyone knows the rules. We're still learning, so we're going to give you some grace on this one. They did nothing with it. Mm-hmm. They said, we're going to give you some grace because you didn't know. I don't see how the board can't take the same action here with Lisa and with Wendy and say, you know what, like, when this event occurred, when Roddy did this, you guys both have said that you were acting on trust for an expert, Roddy, who's, you know, the police chief, and has been that for 40 years, to your point, Daniel. I guess I just don't see how we can't say, like, at the time, you guys trusted the police chief because he knew better than you did, and you were new and you didn't know all the rules. Now you know the rules, let's have some grace.
What do you think the odds are? Maybe you both can answer this question. The election day is November 8th, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so they had the hearing, and it felt like things were kind of wrapped up with this discussion at this hearing. I thought Joel Miller made just a most amazing,
That was a bowler speech.
Yeah.
Yep.
in every way,
Props to Joel.
because he didn't like pull punches against anybody. He wasn't trying to like take it easy on anybody. He said it was wrong. He was, you know.
I mean, I've never seen anybody censure somebody without a vote. That was pretty
Right.
funny.
Yeah.
That was pretty funny.
So it felt like it had run its course.
Yeah.
And there was almost this palpable sense of panic again, like, no, don't let the drama die out quite yet. Let's keep it going a little longer. And so my question is, how hard is this going to be pushed by the people who are pushing this ethics issue come November 9th?
That's their doubt. Like you hit on it earlier. You said it's easier to tell somebody not to vote for this one person than it is to tell somebody to vote for these two people.
Yep.
So this is the doubt. This is like the thing to me that makes this ridiculous to me is obviously Roddy. Like, this is the probably the most respected, not probably, by far the most respected person in town, getting dragged through the mud by people that adore him too. So like you can see that, like, Larry Phelps definitely not on our side of any of the issues, right?
Right.
Like I said right there, and he was making his public comment. I visibly saw him like try to contain himself. He was that upset, and people were like the entire room came out in support of him, right? Even the people that wanted to have an external investigation still showed their support for Roddy. coming after somebody like that is insane.
Yep.
It was a complete backfire, and the whole move was to set doubt with like, well, Lisa should have gotten the DUI. Well, the facts are like she didn't drive. Like there's a police officer that says that she didn't drive. She said she didn't drive. There was no testing administered. There's no blood test. There's no breathalyzer, and the video is inconclusive. It doesn't show her driving away.
Right.
Like you can't tell me that like she should have gotten a DUI. That's your big bombshell. Because if it was that big of a bombshell, you would have came out with it in March when you pulled the freaking tape.
Well, and I think like just to hammer that point even harder. So last night we got to hear kind of the full findings of the town attorney's ethics investigation. So like this did go through like a full formal process where the town attorney came in, interviewed all the police on the force, interviewed staff, interviewed all the commissioners. Like they've done a really thorough investigation, and basically he came back and said, yeah, like the tickets, like while I don't think anyone actually had any like ill intent, it was still wrong by the letter of the law. I mean, he's a lawyer. That's his job.
Yeah.
That's what he has to uphold the law. But he found no evidence that she did anything wrong. She was on private property. There was no evidence she was drinking and driving. There was no evidence that she should have gotten a DUI, anything like that. So, I mean, I think if you have like an officer of the court who is there to protect the town, and his job is also the ethics like of the town to oversee that, and he's saying, look, we investigated this. We went through the full process. There's nothing here. Why can't we just leave it at that?
Yeah, I can't remember. I was watching the public comments, and someone tried to paint this as Roddy's being dragged through the mud. Lisa, how could you do this to him?
Wow.
And it's like, what mental gymnastics?
It's one of those things like, I hit you in the face and you hurt my knuckles.
Right.
What is the matter with you?
Yes,
That's the equivalent.
So one thing I think we need to touch on too. We've named 2 people tonight: Jason Patrick, Tommy Duggar. There is a third person that is, and I actually don't think we said this. So as part of that kind of the side outcome of all of this is that Lisa's decided to sue these individuals for libel.
And slander,
and slander. I mean, essentially, like, they knew it wasn't true. There's some circumstantial evidence that there's some connection that they were involved in this. Whether or not they say that,
that's the claim.
It's a claim, and it hasn't been taken up by a court yet. That's all still in process, obviously, and we'll let the legal system work this out. We're not going to comment any further on that, but there is a third person who's being sued for this that's involved, and that's a gentleman named Joe Kurtzinger. And Joe Kurtzinger is also, somebody who's involved in politics in the past. He's a former alderman who served many years ago, but served alongside Tommy in some of those early years in the town's history. And what I find ironic, and this goes back to kind of like the minutia of not like learning from your mistakes or learning how to do these things better. Joe Kurtzinger was actually censured while he was in office.
Was he?
Yes, he was.
I knew Larry Phelps was censured. I didn't know Joe was too.
Well, and maybe Joe didn't, like, I know Joe was brought up on an ethics investigation. Maybe he wasn't actually censured.
He sued or something. There was a lawsuit.
He sued and he fought it, and so maybe they weren't able to actually go through with it. That's probably the more accurate statement. But the person on the board at the time who was in support of going after him was Tommy Duggar. Like, you read back through these minutes from those years, and it's just like, and obviously he wasn't the only person. There were other board members in support of it too.
Yeah.
But I just find it ironic that you have these 2 individuals who were like, I think it's fair to say, bitter enemies politically for a number of years, and are now like seen at meetings, hanging out with each other, talking with each other, and
there is a happy ending.
Well,
there is a happy ending.
But they somehow seem to be involved in this together, and isn't it interesting that it's like, you say you can't teach an old dog new tricks, right? Well, it's like all these guys know how to do is bring up ethics violations on each other and censure. Like, this is like all they do to each other, and let's just do it again.
Well, what do they say?
That's how you put pressure on people in Nolensville, apparently.
they say the enemy of my enemy is my friend. It's almost like they found a common target, and they might have bonded over that.
Yeah.
You know, Joe is Kurt Singer is not. He's out of public office long enough, I think,
Yeah.
that I don't want to like go any further because he is a private citizen at this point.
Yeah.
But I will say, do your own research about his history in this town too,
Sure.
because again, I think people the thing that's severely lacking in this town is context of who these people are. You can't in this town, unfortunately, it's such a small town, it's insane. But you can't just take people at their word the same way like I don't want anyone to take our word for it.
Right.
Like we constantly remind people of what our perspective is and who we support or what we did, because that I think we all objectively believe that that's an important facet of having these conversations is understanding where that person sits, what their past is, who do they know, who are they buddies with, what could be another motive behind what all of this is, and so do your own research into this. We don't need to drag every name out, but
No.
It's unfortunate that there's so much reliance on people just not caring enough to hear the story and getting intrigued and forming an opinion about it. And it's kind of like the apartment's density argument. I feel like a lot of people who especially are against any kind of density or mixed use or apartments or whatever you want to call it, what they did was they said, how do I feel about that?
Right.
First,
Yeah.
I don't like it. Okay, let's go find some data, or maybe not even data.
There's no data.
Let's just go find some pieces of snippets of something
Yep.
that tell me I'm feeling right.
Justify my reasoning.
Yes.
Rationalize it for me.
I'm in the marketing world. I actually know this is a fact. People make decisions based on emotion first.
Right.
Then they find the rational reason
To justify,
to
how they
justify
feel.
it. I use that every day in my day job
Yeah. Right.
because it's not about showing them why you're the best or this makes the most sense for you. That's the wrong approach if you're a marketer at first. The first thing you do is hit them on the emotions. And then once they realize they've made an irrational decision, then you start feeding them the bits of
Yeah.
rational stuff
Right.
so they can defend it to themselves,
Right.
to anybody else they've told that decision to, so they can feel okay about the decision they already made.
Yep.
And that's what's happening in our town right now. Speaking of, I think we probably should wrap this episode up.
Yeah.
And next episode,
Hold on, let me mention. So like,
Okay, yeah.
there's obviously a lot of different. We hit up a ton of info.
Okay.
If you want to have a slower pace, I'm gonna put a plug in. If you want to have a slower pace rundown of everything, go on theinsider.com. Read the last 2 blogs.
And I think before we wrap up, I really, just real quickly, I would love to hear, because we didn't touch on this, but why is this happening? Why do you think these individuals
Payback.
are trying to get involved?
Payback.
Or like,
It's 100
why is this stuff going behind the scenes?
100% payback. It's people that feel like it's either people that feel like the town has been taken away from them unjustly, or with wrongdoing, like we cheated the system somehow and stole the town, or it's people that don't want any sort of change and they will resist it forever. It's
What about you,
payback.
Daniel?
I'm close to that same thought process. I think it's there was a culture. The same reason why the police chief didn't see anything wrong with fixing a ticket. There was a culture in this town for a long time of like, I don't want to use a cliche, but good old boy network, where like we just do things a certain way. And once you live in that world, anything that you can accomplish outside of that does not compute for you if you live in that world.
Yeah.
And so the only explanation, if you live in that world, is someone cheated you somewhere, someone did something wrong. There is no world in where you were wrong or you got complacent in a system that really wasn't efficient or set up to manage a town this size or whatever it was. So I think it's more of like a almost like a worldview issue where they just could not compute people with different perspectives having support, being right,
Yeah.
any idea outside of their own being a good idea.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I agree with both points. I think you're hitting the nail on the head. I think for me, it's just like ego, right? I think you have a handful of individuals that just can't let go, and I think I've said this in other conversations, but it's like some of these individuals think they're like God's gift to like politics and things like that, and
relatable. I mean, I
because you think that of yourself
no,
sometimes.
I quit TNI like 3 different times now.
Yeah.
No.
But I mean,
All right, we got cut off there, but Mike was he was saying that he quit TNI like 3 different times, and so I think we pretty much finished the thought there. I think after that, basically, Chris, you were just like, yeah, I think that sums it up. That was kind of the end of the conversation.
Yeah.
So, thank you so much for watching. Next episode, we promise we're going to tell you where we are, kind of. But we've been sitting here this whole episode,
It's pretty nice though.
not discussing it. But next episode, we're going to share that. So thanks for watching Small Town Charm.